At least they play entertaining games. The Pittsburgh Pirates played an entertaining long game tonight as they lose 10-5 to the Kansas City Royals. So the Pirates once again falling at the hands of the Royals. Will Crow taking the L, 8 runs allowed in his 4 innings, and the Pirates once again losing 10-5. This is a Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and I am going to be joined by someone I had on the show last year, and we're able to get back together again this season, John Perrotto. You have read him, and he has bylines with USA Today, the Associated Press, a myriad of outlets over the years, Forbes Sports in particular, where we're seeing him touch on Major League Baseball throughout this season. So, John, I'm happy to have you back on the show. Unfortunate that it was on an 8:10 first pitch, and we're almost here at midnight for this game to close off, as that was definitely a long one. But I'm glad to have you back nonetheless.
Well, I'm a baseball writer, so I'm used to being up late. It's not that big of a deal. And at least the Buccos didn't get no hit like the last time I was on your show last year when Lucas Giolito threw a no-hitter against the Pirates.
That's true. Actually, yes. The offense much better than the last time you were on. And there were rough sledding last year, to say the least. As bad as this year has been, last year was rough, especially with the pandemic and everything else going on. So yeah, some run support tonight, maybe even more run support than the Pirates have got in different points this season. The pitching staff did not perform in this game when it has in the past, mostly because of the Will Crow start, as he ended up with his worst outing of the year and went from so-so outings to really, really bad in this one, but nothing surprising when you're the Pittsburgh Pirates. What I do want to ask you, though, before we get to fully into this game, it's actually been a topic that I heard brought up on Sunday Night Baseball that we actually discussed on our morning show, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Adam Frazier, we saw actually multiple appearances there in the outfield in this game after an appearance as designated hitter just a game ago. He's been hitting over 330 most of the year, and while many think that Key Brian Hayes, for good reason, is that building block, maybe Brian Reynolds as well with how well he's played this year and kind of the untouchables for the Pirates, is it possible that Adam Frazier has become somebody that this Pirate team can build around as well, and he now should be part of the future? That was a conversation on Sunday Night Baseball. It seems nationally there's a belief that Adam Frazier now is a part of this trio of Pirates that should be there whenever they do win. Is that the case now with the great season Adam Frazier has had, or still no?
I don't think. I think they're full bore committed to a youth movement, and Adam Frazier is having a good season, and I think Adam Frazier is a good player. I've liked him ever since he got called up 4 or 5 years ago to the big leagues. I think he's quietly had a very nice little career for the Pirates.
Yeah,
he's 29, and I just think he's probably in the situation they're in. By the time they get good again, he's going to be eligible for free agency in a couple of years. He probably, especially with still having another year before free agency, he probably has more value to the Pirates over the long haul as a trade chip to maybe get a decent prospect or two back than he does to hang around here. Now he would certainly help them win a few more games, but the Pirates are really taking the long view here, Mike, and they are looking at the future for everything. And I'm certain, I mean, Ben Cherington won't come out and say this and play his hand publicly.
Sure.
But I think if you look at everything Ben Cherington has done in the last, pretty much 8 or 9 months since last season ended, everything is for the future. And I think that's why I don't think Adam Frazier is here. I heard that too on ESPN, and that kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit. I think it was a case of just getting a little overly hyped about a guy having a good season. But no, I don't think Adam Frazier will be here much longer, probably not past the trade deadline.
And I'm sure there was a bit also of shock and awe when they were researching the game. Oh, man, the Pirates actually have a player hitting 330, hitting 335 actually in this game. With as bad as they've been, you look at him, JT Brubaker, and some of the bullpen, they actually have a few players this year that are having legit all-star seasons, and Frazier would be one of them. Now hitting 335, 2 for 4 in this game as the Pirates lose 10-5 to Kansas City. That includes a 5-run inning there for the Royals. So the Pirates had control of this early on here. Again, joined by John Perrotto, one of the most tenured baseball writers there covering the Pirates. That's probably the case, and if they could bring some value back for him, that certainly would be a positive. But it's just phenomenal. He is having a legit all-star year, and his age probably doesn't command. Also with Gonzalez down there waiting in the wings and the position situation. And although maybe that's why he's getting these appearances in the outfield and getting cracks outside of the infield, is that possible that they're trying to find somewhere else for him because he's hitting so well?
I think that's part, and I think it's part to let other teams know his versatility because, he's played mainly second base this would be the third year he's been the primary second baseman. But,
right.
If you recall his first 2 or 3 years in the big leagues, he played all over. He can play third base. He can play an adequate shortstop. I don't know if he could be an everyday guy at shortstop, but he certainly can fill the void for you if you have somebody hurt for a week or two. He can play left. He can play right. He's adequate in center field when he played out there in the past. And a guy like that's very valuable, especially as a left-handed hitter for a contending team. And, I don't know if Adam Frazier is a starting player on a lot of really good teams, but I certainly think he certainly can help any team in the big leagues with his left-handed bat and his versatility.
Yeah, and you look at this, again, this season for Adam Frazier hitting 335. It's been solid to say the very, very least, leading the league in hits at different points, and 2 for 4 with a run driven in, a run scored, a couple 2-baggers in this game. So it was a good night for him driving the offense, only 5 runs. They do lose 10-5. I do want to also ask you about the starter of this game, Will Crowe. 8 earned runs on 8 hits, 4 innings pitched, 3 Ks, 2 walks. An ERA now teetering just above 7 at 7.26. He's allowed 3 off 5. He's allowed 4 runs. He had to leave a game early where he was allowing a few. It's not been great for him. And of course, besides Tyler Anderson and Brubaker, there hasn't been a legit starter amongst this group, even though they've got better pitching than maybe some would have thought entering the season. But what are your thoughts on Will Crowe when you've seen him go? Not tons of experience. He's not the oldest guy in the world, but this was obviously a really, really bad outing. But he is getting opportunities this year that maybe others wouldn't have thought he would get.
He has, and they've been open about the fact they're going to give a lot of starting pitchers opportunities, and right. He's gotten a shot here. And, to be quite frank, I don't see him as a long-term big league starter off what I've seen so far. I mean, tonight's a perfect example. He gets handed a 4-1 lead and he hands it right back and then some. And, you can't do that and be a successful big league pitcher. And I'm not saying that you're going to, every game you're going to take the lead and just run with it. There are going to be games over the course of a season where
sure.
You handed the lead and you hand it back. But it seems like he does that quite a bit here early on in his career. And I hate to say a guy can't be a big league starter when he's only made 10 starts in the big leagues.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The experience isn't in terms of we haven't seen tons of body of work, but it's not been great what we've seen.
No, it hasn't. And I'll be quite honest, there isn't a whole lot that I've seen there that I can hang my hat on this guy and say, well, he does have this or he does do that.
Right.
And
right.
I mean, to me, he's just a guy, and I know that's really what the Nationals thought of him, and it really kind of speaks to how low Josh Bell's trade value was at the end of last season. Yeah. I mean, they get him now. They got Eddie Yean, who's a teenager, and it'll be quite a few years before we might see him in Pittsburgh. But if this is all the better they could get for Josh Bell, I mean that does tell you that Josh's trade value has dropped quite a bit from the first half of the 2019 season.
Yeah, well, I think that was the maybe underrated part of how bad last year was for the Pirate franchise. And obviously, it wasn't a great year for them winning, but they didn't even get legit trade value out of Josh Bell or out any of the other pieces that if they would have had solid years, even individually, they could have got something for him. That was really what last year was about in the rebuild process. And Bell couldn't have offered them anything worse in terms of giving them value back. Now, in the beginning of this series, we saw Chad Kuhl return to the mound. He went for not the best of starts for him either, but certainly dealing with a long time out. of the lineup as he allowed 3 runs off 6 hits in those 4 innings, no walks, 5 strikeouts in that game. What are your thoughts on Chad Kuhl? Because he had the opening date nod. He's been the veteran around. Many thought he would be the guy that could stabilize this starting rotation and he could be the leader of this staff. It's not been the case. He struggled. He then got hurt. He hasn't been around. Brubaker and Tyler Anderson have kind of stepped up for him and have been that guy. They're the 2 starters that you can count on this staff. But Chad Kuhl's just one of those guys that many had hope for just a couple years ago. Injuries have kind of derailed things. Is there still hope there for him individually, for him as a Pirate, or is this going to be one of those unlucky stories because he's back, but there still were signs of what we saw prior to the injury where he would have some great at-bats and then would have some really bad at-bats and it would be an average start at best?
I think I was a big Chad Kuhl guy when he got called up. I really liked the way he attacked hitters, the way he went after hitters when he first got called to the big leagues. And injuries have really, really derailed his career. And I don't think he's the same pitcher that he was when he came to the big leagues and beat Clayton Kershaw on Sunday Night Baseball as a rookie, which was really impressive, going toe-to-toe with a future Hall of Famer.
To say the least,
television. Right. Yeah. And I think Chad, it might be the point where I just don't know if he's got the durability to give you 6 good innings in a start. I just don't know. And it pains me to say that because I do like him. I like his competitiveness. I like the way he goes about his business. I think when he's healthy, when he was healthy before the arm surgery, he really had good stuff. Maybe he'll bounce back, but I can't help but wonder, and again, I hate to make hair-trigger decisions on a guy that's only made a couple of starts this year, but I'm starting to wonder if he wouldn't be better served in a role of just coming in and throwing that power sinker and throwing it 98 miles an hour for an inning or two and not worrying about having to pace himself, not worry about blowing his arm out and, not worrying about having to try to last 5 or 6 innings. I still think Chad has his uses, but I'm starting to wonder if maybe the bullpen isn't a better option for him.
And we've seen that save guys' careers in the past, so it could potentially save his career. He's not been the same guy since the injuries, and I think that's the key too. You hit the nail on the head that you don't have confidence in him going 5 or 6 innings. And on a team like the Pirates, even though it's not about winning and losing this year necessarily, the reason why you can have some confidence in Brubaker and Anderson is they can give you some belief they can go 5, can go 6, even if they're not going to beat and have a better day than the opposing pitcher. That's not the case with Chad Kuhl, and that's not really the case with anybody else. John Perrotto joining me here on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. The Pirates lose this one 10-5, but again, wins and losses aren't really what it's all about this season. You may have been fooled by the first 2 weeks, but that's how these shows kind of venture into a talk show because you can only go so much about what went on in this game, even though it was a long one for one of these Tuesday night games after a holiday, and the Pirates do lose it. Will Crow taking the L for the Pirates. The bullpen can't do anything, and despite a solid day again from Adam Frazier, not enough around him. Brian Reynolds also solid as well. Now, John, I do want to ask you about some news prior to the game, and that concerned Colin Moran and Phillip Evans. Haven't seen them in a while. Haven't seen Evans even in a longer while. Evans started the year red hot, then tapered off back down to earth. And Colin Moran, for the past year and a half, has been maybe that Pirate, that rare Pirate that can actually give you some sense of pop in his bat, even though maybe you don't get much else. What are your thoughts on the futures of those two? Because Derek Shelton's saying that he's going to bring them to a rehab start. You're going to see more of them this year, but not really in an everyday role. It seems like minimal use of them due to the health, if anything, this year. But Evans has just completely collapsed from where he was, and maybe the opening of the season was a bit over the head of what we should expect out of him. But Colin Moran, maybe some thoughts stabilize the position at a time. But what are your thoughts if either one of them can be part of the building block of this team?
As far as Phillip Evans goes, I think he's a decent utility guy on a bad team like the Pirates. You can play him at first, play him at third, play him in the outfield.
Right.
The one thing I've learned from doing this is my 33rd year. And, I hate to say it, I'm not trying to be disparaging here, But when you see a guy that's been in the minor leagues 8, 9, 10 years and never got that shot in the big leagues,
That's
now there's an occasion where it's just been a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But usually, if you're a really good player, a guy who can be an everyday player in the big leagues, you're going to get that shot over that extended period of time in the minor leagues. And the fact that Phillip Evans never has kind of tells me that I don't think it's just realistic to think the guy is all of a sudden going to turn into an everyday player. And I know he did get off to a good start, and that gave a lot of fans hope, and maybe even some people in the Pirate organization. But as far as Colin Moran, I'll admit I was not a big Colin Moran guy when he first came over here. I thought, this guy is a corner infielder who has no power. And, he was a very highly regarded college player at the University of North Carolina, All-American, was one of the finalists for the Golden Spikes Award, which goes basically the college baseball version of the Heisman Trophy. He was a number 6 overall pick in the draft by Miami. And, I thought, well, this guy's just a bust, and I don't know what the big deal about him was, but he showed me something the last couple of years. And, I thought, well, last year, maybe that was just fluky. It was a short 60-game season. But I liked the way he went about it again the first month or so of this season before he got hurt. And, I don't want to say he's a difference maker per se, but on this team in the lineup they have with hardly any pop, they miss him. They do. And, he's turned himself into a pretty decent big league hitter. And right now, you look at the lineup tonight, even they scored 5 runs against the Royals, which for them is a pretty good night. But they had to scratch and claw for everything. The one inning, they had a couple sacrifice flies, took advantage of an error, things like that when they got their 3 runs. And they need somebody, and I know Moran's not a huge home run hitter per se, but he can hit the ball in the gap. He can get some extra base hits. And they really desperately need that from him. And, it looks like Brian Hayes will be back here probably as early as Thursday when they open the homestand against the Marlins. And, those guys, they should help. I mean, I don't think all of a sudden they're going to transform this lineup into one of the better lineups in the league, but certainly they'll have a little bit more punch in the lineup and have a chance to score a few more runs.
Pirates lose 10-5 to the Royals, another loss to KC as they will move on to that series against Miami here coming up. Colin Moran provided a threat of going deep. Even if he's not going to go deep 20 times a year and maybe more doubles than homers, he does provide that threat of the home run, which you need in a lineup and the Pirates don't have otherwise. Will Craig certainly hasn't stabilized or impressed with Colin Moran out 0-for-2 in this game. He's been struggling at the plate, hitting .217 on the year. Has there been anybody... Speaking of Will Craig, has there been anybody of that youth movement? And obviously this is one of the worst teams in baseball, a really, really bad team. The offense has been the reason why. We know how bad and ugly it's been. But has there been anybody at all in terms of this youth movement that provides any hope outside of the cornerstone of Brian Hayes and maybe Brian Reynolds? And if you choose to try to fit Adam Frazier in there for a year or two and call Moran, because the Wilmer Defoe experiment, Will Craig, etc. Yes, it makes sense to go on a youth movement when you're not trying to win, or at least the wins don't matter for this year, even if that's not what you're going to admit. But that youth movement hasn't worked. The youth movement has just been awful. There's been nothing from the youth movement.
I agree, but I also don't know if you can say the youth movement is even really started yet. The players that they're really counting on, and I understand where you're coming from, and it is disappointing that some of these younger guys like Mitch Keller, which we could have a show just on him alone.
We could, yes.
His disappointment have not gotten better, but the guys that they really, 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 beside Brian Hayes, but the other guys who they really feel can transform this organization are still, some of them are in AAA, a lot of them are in AA, a lot of them are in A-ball. So it's going to be a while. And, I think if you shot Derek Shelton and Ben Cherington with truth serum and said, how many of these guys on this 25-man roster, 26-man now roster this year will be around the next time the Pirates are good, they'd probably say a handful at the most. I mean, I think Brian Reynolds is going to be a good player. I don't think he's going to be a great player, and I think he's still young enough that he can be here when they theoretically get competitive again. I think JT Brubaker has shown a lot of improvement this year in the rotation. You can tell he's a lot more confident. He attacks the strike zone now. He goes after hitters. For last year, he used to pick around the edges of the strike zone a lot. I think Mitch Keller could learn a lot from just watching JT Brubaker pitch and what a difference it makes when you attack hitters, because Mitch Keller has better stuff than JT Brubaker. His pitches are just better. He's got more talent than JT, but you look at the other guys on this team. I don't see Kevin Newman as a long-term answer. I don't see Moran as a long-term answer. Adam Frazier, we've covered him. He's at the age now where by the time they get good, he's going to be kind of long in the tooth. So, it would be heartening to see the Will Crows and people like that at least show something to make you think that they can at least be part of the youth movement, if not necessarily stars, at least, role players or something. And it's been disappointing. Not a whole lot of their young players have shown well, though. I did like Miguel Yajure, who came up a couple times to pitch, make spot starts. One of the pitchers they got from the Yankees. I liked him. I was really impressed. I was impressed by the way he wasn't scared. He looked like he felt like you could tell he felt that he had the confidence to get big league hitters out. And, hopefully I'd like to see them give him more of a chance this year, because I think they may have something in him. Again, I'm not saying he's a Cy Young type guy, but certainly he could be an above average big league pitcher off the 2 times I've watched him pitch. I was pretty impressed.
Yeah, I actually would also like to see maybe the pitch count taken off of him, and I get why it's there, but he has pitched well when given the nod, and sometimes maybe there are a few of these Pirate pitchers that are being so young, with this being a rebuilding year and trying to see the individual, that maybe you just like to see if they can get out of a jam. Yahari's been one of those that he pitches well, 4th, 5th inning. Once there's a little sign of faltering, he gets the hook. I'd like to see him try to pitch out of that jam and see if maybe he can get that pitch count removed a little bit, although that's, of course, not the way of the current Major League Baseball. No. So it's probably not going to happen. It'll just be in my dreams. Yeah, I think that's the most disappointing part of this year. Whether they lose 100 games, 95 games, it doesn't matter. But what mattered is showing some signs of improvement from the youth movement, if the youth movement's going to get so much time, and even more time than some would have thought because of all the injuries to the other starters, including Ke'Bryan Hayes. And yet they just haven't shown any glimmer of hope otherwise, although, and fans won't like hearing this, this is probably year 1 of a long stretch of this rebuilding phase that you're alluding to. So this might be more of a conversation to have 2 or 3 years from now, and then to say we need to see some of the youth players, even if they're not winning, play well. And if not, that's a catastrophe. Maybe it's not a catastrophe yet because they're very early into this stage now with Ben Cherington running the ship here. John Perrotto joining me here on the Pirates edition here of Pittsburgh Postgame. The Pirates lose this one 10-5. Will Crow getting the loss. The Pirates now remaining in the basement of the division and of baseball here. And the Royals still a couple games above 500. So they have been teetering in their little youth movement and maybe been better than some would have thought. Jacob Stallings, to me, has kind of been that unsung hero this year. Is he somebody that the Pirates can get something for, you believe, with the deadline? With his age, he's obviously not a part of the future. He actually has played well this year and last year. I know he didn't play in this game, but he has been that unsung hero, especially with very few legit catchers in Major League Baseball. There are not many all-star catchers out there. There are a few, and I'm not saying he's an all-star, but has he done enough to bring any value back by the last year and a half? Or is this just be happy for the guy? He's improved the last name in the city of Pittsburgh from what his father did as head coach of Pitt, but that'll be it.
The thing, it's hard to trade a catcher during the season, and I certainly think he's good enough to help teams. It's not his talent. It's just hard. Teams usually shy away from switching catchers, bringing a catcher in from outside the organization during the season because You have to learn a pitching staff. The pitching staff has to get comfortable with you.
Right. It's about more
probably
than just hitting. Yeah.
If he gets traded, it would be more likely to happen in the off season. But he is the one guy. And again, if I'm the Pirates, I'm not wedded to any of these guys now for what we've talked about before.
Right.
I might make a little bit of an exception for Jacob Stallings. He works so well with the pitching staff, and these pitchers trust him implicitly. They really, he does a good job with them. He might be a guy that I would think twice before trading, unless I really got pretty good value for him. I think he might be one of these guys who helps your youth movement more by sticking around than by what you get for him in a trade. And I say that out of great respect for Jacob, because he's an impressive guy and he really takes working with the pitchers to heart and really trying to develop those guys. And I think the Pirates might be better served keeping him for a year or two. But again, if they get offered a really good trade offer, they certainly would have to think about it. But if they only would get like okay prospects for him, I think they might just be better served in the long run to keep him here with the young pitchers.
And the betting against him in terms of bringing value back would be that it probably can't happen at the deadline. It probably will be an offseason move for what you detailed there with him being a catcher. So that's unluckiness for the Pirates as well. You have an unsung hero who plays a position that you basically can't move at the deadline, and his age doesn't work for you either. But other teams are probably going to bet the fact that his best days are behind him. He's had a great year and a half. It's fantastic. Everyone's happy for him. But is he going to do that again in the future might be the concern, to give up too much for him. It's not like he's all of a sudden hitting 300. He's still giving you that 250 batting average. It's just phenomenal for him as a catcher to stabilize the position for the Pirates. I also say that with Perez having a couple hits in this 10-5 loss to the Royals as part of the rare part of their offense. They actually did get hits in this game, did Pittsburgh, despite the 5 runs and despite still losing by 5 runs. But the Pirates 10 hits in the game, so they lose 12-10 in the hit department and 10-5 in the game, despite a couple errors there from the Royals. That's a game that if they had better pitching, they might have been able to snag based on, you just look at that box score alone. And it goes to that one bad inning, allowing 5 to the Royals. And then, of course, kerosene on the fire with Crow there before the bullpen gets to him. And those earned those runs against him because they didn't have much to work with once they entered the game. But I love seeing Jacob Stallings hit. I just love seeing his progression. I love seeing him deal with the pitching staff. That could be a good point, that he can help the progression of the staff, which needs help, by being that extension of the coaching staff as a catcher, which is something catchers often are. But you just feel like his value is never going to be higher. I mean, easily next year could go all of a sudden and hit 200. This is just ridiculous.
I have a lot of respect for what he has done, because ever since he got drafted out of North Carolina as a college player, the thing was always, he's a good defensive catcher, but he's probably not going to hit enough to play in the big leagues, and maybe not even hit enough to be a backup catcher in the big leagues. He worked really hard. He spent a lot of time in the minor leagues. He wasn't considered a prospect. He really had to work on his offense. And he's become a good big league player. And, I give him credit for that, because nothing was handed to him coming up through the minor leagues. He had to scratch and claw to get to every level. And now he made it, and he's done well. And, he's the kind of guy who I would not be surprised, just the way he understands the game, the way he relates to people, the way he relates to the media, his teammate,
coach or manager. Yeah.
I think eventually you'll see, if he wants to do it. And some guys just don't want to make that time commitment once their playing career ends. But if he wants to do it, I think at some point Jacob will probably work his way into being a big league manager.
Yeah, and obviously the catcher position, like a goalie position in hockey, those positions, they just get so focused on so much of the game that it often does translate. So quarterbacks as offensive coordinators in football, that could make sense. I definitely wouldn't be shocked at all if we go down that road here. Again, Pirates Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Smash that subscribe button if you like what you see and hear with John Perrotto, as we're happy to get him back on the show here. Pirates do score in this one, unlike when we had him on last year, but still another loss for the Pittsburgh Pirates, losing 10-5 in this game. Now, John, what I do want to ask you is about the DH spot in this series against an American League team on the road. And we've seen this a little bit this year, where they switched out Evans and Moran earlier in the season. But with them both hurt, Do you like or not like what they did with the DH spot in this series? They basically played hot potato with the DH, Brian Reynolds DHing in this game, Adam Frazier DHing last night. They didn't really stabilize anybody. We still don't know if the DH is ever going to be a thing permanently in the National League like it was last year with the pandemic. That could be a hope in the future. But as we stand now, it's not the case. But they gave it to most of the infielders rather than maybe throwing it to Polanco one day, because he certainly can't do much in the outfield any longer. And just maybe get some of the young kids. Maybe Will Craig could have got a spot there in DH since he's not been able to get it done too much in the field either. But is it okay with you, or would you have seen something else happen with this DH spot, since they're the only team seemingly in Major League Baseball that has no one in mind to be a DH when they have the opportunity?
Well, if you look at the personnel they have, and especially with Moran and Evans and Hayes on the IL right now, they really don't have that veteran hitter. Yeah, it's kind of just, it's almost all he can really do is pinch hit at this stage of his career. So they really have that guy on the bench. You say, wow, this is a perfect day to get him in back-to-back games so he can DH. So I think
what about letting Polanco DH and then trying Frazier more permanently at left field to see if you have him at the outfield, because Gonzalez comes up in the infield and Polanco's just been porous in the outfield defensively overall? It seems like it could have been an opportunity to let him DH, get what you get there, and then that would have been a better defensive team rather than tweaking this infield situation.
I did kind of expect Polanco to DH in at least one of these two games, partially for what you said, maybe to try Frazier in the outfield a little, and also just to try to keep Polanco off his feet a little bit, and keep him from having to save as many bullets in that surgically repaired arm as they could. But I also understand making Frazier the DH because he's played pretty much every game, and it gives him a chance to take a bit of a day off, not a total day off. And, in a case like this, I think it would have been interesting in a three-game series, you almost certainly would have seen Polanco at least DH one game.
I would bet,
but in the two-game series, I think Shelton just wanted to just use these 2 days to give his, some of his infielders, a bit of a break without a full day off.
Well, Frazier leaves the day off hitting .335, going 2-for-4 in the game. So again, Frazier's been that bright spot on the year that I'm sure those fans who don't follow the Pirates on a regular basis probably are shocked that there's a player on the Pirates it's doing this, actually, because you put those stats up there, that's all-star caliber yet again. Now, John, as we round things out here, you alluded to this earlier, and it's kind of been the elephant in the room with Pittsburgh fans and media all season. It's very odd to me that this has occurred, but maybe they're just focusing so much on the Penguins' first-round disappointment and, of course, waiting for the Steelers season, that Ke'Bryan Hayes, injured in the first series of the year after the opening day homer, obviously the building block of the future. Prior to the season, many are saying he's going to be one of the better outfielders in all of baseball already this year. We know the heroics at the end of last season, but, of course, as you know, it certainly depends on what you do when you see those pitchers again and you get a second, third, and fourth turn with those same pitchers that he didn't have to deal with last year in that last month of the pandemic season. He's been hurt. He's actually been out much longer than originally advertised, originally just a 10-dayer. He then re-aggravated things. He's been out longer. It hasn't been a big deal, obviously, because this team hasn't been winning. And if he wasn't able to come back soon, you could probably make the argument that why not just sit him all year, because why risk him in this season is all for naught. But any concerns about him being injury prone, dealing with this multiple times in a year, so young? And is he still that cornerstone piece for you for this team? And just anything you're hearing about the Ke'Bryan Hayes dialogue, because I've been kind of surprised. The fans and media have almost quieted on the topic. And I know Derek Shelton didn't give much to you guys, but fans haven't even been clamoring for Ke'Bryan Hayes. It's almost like, well, we'll see him when we see him. But that's not common for the sports fan, the Pittsburgh sports fan, to just sit on their hands. That's been the case for Ke'Bryan Hayes this year.
Yeah, I think what's happened is, like you said, the Penguins have dominated so much of the sports headlines conversation in Pittsburgh here in the last few months, and even the Steelers with all the the draft and what have you, and the various retirements and the whole Big Ben thing.
Right, I'll be in Canton for the whole Steelers parade and the whole thing. Yeah.
And I think I'm be quite blunt here. And I was thinking about this watching the game tonight.
Yeah.
If you're a baseball fan and a Pirate fan, there's not a whole lot of entertainment value in watching the Pirates. They don't have very many exciting players.
No.
They don't play an exciting brand of baseball. I mean, I know they try to hit and run and steal
Chinese water torture when they score.
So I think a lot of people are just turned off, and I think a lot of people, realize that they're not even going to try to win this year. So I think a lot of people aren't paying attention. And, I'm going to be real curious now that the restrictions are off, attendance and full capacity is back at PNC Park. It's easy to write off these really small crowds so far as saying, well, they can only sell so many tickets, the pandemic, this, that. Well, now when you're going to be able to sell 35,000 tickets a night, I'm curious how many people are you still only going to have 5,000 or 6,000 people a night? And if you do, then we're going to get a full indication of just how apathetic Pittsburgh sports fans are to the Pirates right now. But to get to your question, I think Pirate fans are so conditioned to something bad happening that when Hayes got hurt, it was just kind of like, well, of course he got hurt. What else?
But it's almost like a little early on the curse.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the thing. I with him being so young.
Yeah. I think now, the Penguins that's over. Everyone's over analyzing what happened to them. And, the Steelers are going to, except for minicamp in a couple of weeks, they go pretty quiet until the end of July. And I think now, there'll be a lot more focus on the Pirates. And certainly if Hayes is healthy, there'll be a lot of focus on him because he is the one guy on this team, and I think you could potentially throw Mitch Keller into this on this small list too. If
that's almost a hot take this year,
exactly. Or guys who are part of this long range plan here in Pittsburgh with the Pirates, and I think there's no doubt the Pirates don't hide that about Ke'Bryan Hayes. I mean, they admittedly say they think this guy is going to be a key part of this ball club for a long time. And to be honest, I don't want to get too overly hyped about a 24-game audition in a pandemic shortened season, but he certainly showed that he could handle the big leagues. I've got to know Ke'Bryan a little bit coming up through the minors. I knew his dad. I covered his dad, Charlie, when he played for the Pirates. And Ke'Bryan's a very calm, very level-headed kid who carries himself with a lot more maturity than your normal 24-year-old ball player. He understands the game, and he made a remark in spring training this year when he was on one of the media Zooms that I thought was a very, very mature comment for a young player who's still technically a rookie. Right. He said, I don't want to get too excited about what I did last year. He said, you have to remember, we only played teams from the Central Division. He goes, there's a whole lot of other teams and a whole lot of other pitchers I'm going to have to face and prove myself against. So he said, that's why I'm not ready to say, hey, I'm going to win Rookie of the Year like people are predicting and things like that. He goes, let's see. There's going to be a lot of different pitchers I'm going to have to learn and I'm going to have to face and I'm going to have to have success against. And I was very, very impressed by that. I thought that was quite a bit of good self-awareness on a young player's part to make that point.
That's maturity. That's for sure maturity. And often you don't see that with a young athlete who has a little tinge of success at that age. So that definite maturity. And I think in terms of the excitement factor and what would maybe have fans go to the ballpark when they can or even watch on TV would be Ke'Bryan Hayes. I mean, he actually was providing excitement to a Pirate team that was very, very bad in a pandemic shortened season that was getting discussed. Ke'Bryan Hayes, his heroics were getting him discussed to lead off and headline the 5 o'clock news all through the docket in September last year before Steelers season got underway because he was playing so well and the Pirates were well out of the race at that point. Yep. So that shows you the excitement that he can deliver. You don't know, though, and it might also certainly be cart before the horse when you had MLB Network and those places saying he's top 5 outfielder in all of baseball already. This is off a month of playing, so maybe it might be time to pump the brakes a bit, but unfortunately we didn't get to see at this point. How do you think he's going to be handled throughout this season, though, when he does return? Is this going to be the annoyance of he'll play and then he'll be sitting for 2 or 3 days, then play again? Or is he going to let him go? Because now this could be a barometer if he's injury plagued or not. He is still very, very young. He should be well recovered after sitting out so long and dealing with multiple re-aggravations. Is he going to get to play the rest of this year legitimately?
I would think so. They may give him a few days off here the first week or two back till he works his way kind of back into playing shape and to make sure he doesn't overextend himself and put too much strain on that wrist. But I think he's going to play every day when it's all said and done. I mean, for one, they've got nothing to lose by playing him. If he hits those 72, I mean, he's still going to gain.
Well, unless him
experience
as a player.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, with them in the youth movement, him being a big part of this youth movement, I think you've got to play him every day. And I'm sure they will. I mean, they did last September. Yeah. And, I think they will. And if they don't, then there's no sense him being here. He should be back in AAA again. And I don't think he has anything left to prove in AAA. So, yeah, I think, it's going to be something, it's just been a long season already. We're only a third of the way through. And it's going to be, it's going to be a long season. And I think everyone that understands what they're doing knows that. But certainly tracking how Brian Hayes does and how well he continues to adjust to the big league level and how much progress he makes is certainly going to be worth tracking this season and certainly be worth following.
Yeah, it's a long season for the reality of the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was a great season for the virtual Pirates that you put together last year during the pandemic season. So the reality has not been able to touch the virtual Pirates this year or last year. And Brian Hayes is obviously who to watch for. My only reason for the question is if because he's dealt with injuries, if they're going to be concerned to preserve their investment. Yeah. They don't care about winning this year necessarily, but they don't want to get him hurt again with his age and the fact that he did a re-aggravated injury. That they probably regret the announcement initially when he first got hurt that, oh, no, it'll only be 10 days. Don't worry about it. And we still haven't seen this man. And we are now going into June. And that was way at the beginning of the season. So maybe they're going to be a little shyer with any announcements whenever he does miss a game on what actually is going on. Because that's also why I thought fans maybe would clamor or ask, even though, of course, there's many distractions with Pittsburgh sports fans right now and the Pirates aren't the focus. Just uncertainty for a while. Then you hear a re-aggravation. That could cause for some freak out when you think those young players are cursed around the Pirates. But he is that building block. He is the one player there's no conversation about. He has a position. He's who they're going to build around. Everybody else get around him. Maybe it'll be Frazier. Maybe it'll be Reynolds. Maybe it'll be Brubaker. Maybe even Tyler Anderson, who gets the bump in that opening series start against Miami. So we'll see. The win-loss record hasn't been there for Tyler Anderson, but he has been another unsung hero as a pitcher who at least can go 5 or 6 for the Pirates in the rotation most of this year. John, I appreciate the time. We'll definitely talk again throughout this long season. And I definitely appreciate the time, man. We can find you all over, of course, Forbes Sports. You have had bylines, the USA Today, the Trib, AP Sports. Anywhere else that you're at today that you want to let out there?
I also do for Baseball Digest magazine. I do quite a few longish features. It comes out every 2 months. You can find it on. If they still have newsstands, I used to say the newsstand near you.
I think they're out there somewhere.
Not a plug, but if you want to give me extra fuel perks, Giant Eagle carries it. I know Giant Eagle carries Baseball Digest, so I can say you can find it there, and I think Barnes and Noble, places like that, bookstores carry it. So, yeah, and also online, like you said, all the outlets you mentioned, you can find me there. Sports Betting Dime, my new venture here in the last year or so. So I'm about everywhere. Hit Google, and you'll find me, and hopefully you won't find anything bad about me when you Google me.
Yeah, we'll just hopefully all that's dead and buried many moons ago. But yeah, I like to say that for myself as well. Just Google search me. If you can't find me, then you're just not trying hard enough. And I won't date them when you threw out your tenure there of how long you've been covering the Pirates, and that's hitting my age. But I appreciate the mentorship and the time, and I give all the respect in the world. So John Perrotto, definitely appreciate you jumping on the show. Another loss for the Pittsburgh Pirates. This one 10-5 to the Kansas City Royals. Wins and losses don't matter. Maybe you're annoyed with me saying that, but it's the truth. So let's hit a dose of reality here on this edition of the Postgame Show and all the editions of the Postgame Show here on PSL. The Pirates now head to a series against Miami. We'll maybe see you next week on these postgame shows. I'm going to be kind of busy the rest of this week. Maybe Alan or Matt will get one for you here, as I'm going to be busy this weekend getting married. So I will drop that there that I've alluded to on past shows. That'll do it, though. Will Crowe, 8 runs, 8 hits, 4 innings. Not enough. Of course, not enough. And concerned about what you expect from him moving forward. Adam Frazier, 2 for 4, scores, drives a run home, a couple doubles. Continues to hit, now hitting .335, so having an all-star season out of nowhere. Is he a part of the building block as well? John says no. We discussed on the morning show. Maybe. His age doesn't say that, though. Nationally, they think that could be potentially a conversation. Brian Reynolds having a better year than last year, not to the level of 2 years ago, but he could potentially be around as well. And, of course, Brubaker, Tyler Anderson. See if he can continue to build on his season, but some down starts recently, and if this bullpen can turn it back around as well, because they need some hope from some of these individuals, and maybe it'll be Key Brian Hayes in his return to see what he can do now with his second turn around to these pitchers and facing more than the Central Division this year than he did last year in that hot month. Can he get it done? That's what to watch for this year, not the wins and losses. What can Key Brian Hayes do the rest of the year, and can somebody else step up outside of the older players like Stallings and Adam Frazier? Again, thanks to John Perrotto. You can find him at jperrotto on Twitter. You can also find him at the myriad of outlets we mentioned there: Forbes Sports, Baseball Digest, USA Today. Former Trib colleague of mine, AP Sports, still touches some of those at different points in his career, as he really is all over the place. So feel free to Google him as well. Pirates lose 10-5. Will Crowe takes the L. That'll do it here for this edition of Pirates Postgame here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and it'll allow us to get all of our content to you. It is free to hit that button, thanks to our sponsors.